Did you know that you can knit with just a hook? Hook drop. Hey there, and welcome to the Totally Fierce Crochet channel. My name's Thomas, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how you can make such beautiful knitted fabrics with just a little hook. Okay, it's a little bit of a special crochet hook because it has a hole in the back, and it's not really a crochet hook, it's more a knooking hook. That's right. The technique that I'm going to show you in this video is called Knooking, and it basically combines knitting and crochet or hooking. Aren't all crocheters hookers? And it really is a fun and super easy to learn technique. Personally, I think it's so much easier than knitting because you don't have two needles. All you need is a crochet hook with a hole in the end, so you can have some sort of a helping yarn throughout your project that keeps the loops up so you can grab them in the next round. So if this technique is new for you, feel free to join me because I will give you a basic overview of what knooking is, about the knooking hooks, and I will also show you the two main stitches that let you create projects and pieces that not only look knitted but that also feel knitted, because they basically are. Now, I can't believe knooking was so popular 13, 14, 15 years ago in Germany, and then it was lost out of the sudden. No one really talked about it, and you can do so many things. There are also books about it where you get like examples of what to make. I think back then I even made myself socks using this technique, and it worked absolutely beautiful. And for everyone who just can't knit like myself because I can't coordinate two needles at the same time, this technique is really what you are looking for. And you can combine it easily with regular crochet or Tunisian crochet. So if you want to have like super stretchy and super flexible cuffs for your garments, here you go. Speaking of doing things with it, there will be more tutorials about knooking or projects that incorporate knooking, so be sure to check this out, and also to get yourself a knooking hook, or maybe even two, at least a 4 and a 6 millimeter, I would say, for the future project. And I will also use the knooking technique for all of you who were begging me to make a version of the crochet that looks like knitting patterns in the flat, because with knooking you can do it. I think this is just a beautiful addition to regular crochet and even Tunisian crochet. It sits right in between crochet and knitting, and the result always looks knitted. You can actually recreate every knitting stitch there is out there with this technique. And how awesome is that? And now I'm pretty sure you can't wait to get to know how this works, and I will show you. So here we go with our little crash course in knooking, and here I have all of my knooking hooks or knooking needles. I'm not really sure if they call it a hook or a needle, even though, I mean, it has the typical crochet hook part as the head, and then you will always find a little hole in the back of your hook. Here's a wooden one, here's an aluminium one, a metal one, and as you can see, you always have a hole at the end of the hook or the needle. And this is also the main difference between regular crochet hooks or even Tunisian crochet hooks, where you would have like a cable or just a longer version of the hook. And the reason for this hole in the end is basically that you would put a piece of yarn in there, you just attach it in the hole, and then this serves as some sort of a floating yarn. It replaces the second knitting needle basically, And with that, you can always keep the loops and the stitches on the floating yarn and then go back and forth. Or if you work in the round, you go all around, and you just always like take the floating yarn with you. But I think it's best to just show it so you get an idea. If Knooking is completely new to you, then of course you would have to get yourself a Knooking hook or Knooking needle. You can get them on Amazon. They are not very expensive. Of course, if you have, I don't know, a longer and always straight crochet hook like this one here, and you have a handy husband, or you can do things like this on your own, you can always like add a hole in the end of the hook. Or sometimes I also see things where they put like a little hole in here in the end, at the end, so you can then attach the floating yarn to it. But anyhow, I ordered all of mine from Amazon or from other internet markets. And usually what you have to keep in mind is that you don't have like the variety of different hook sizes. This one is a 10 millimeter. This one's 8. Those two are 6 millimeters. Here's a 5 millimeter, 4 millimeter. And I even have a super thin one. I'm not really sure how much it was. I think I tried it just once and then put it away because it was too thin. So there is some variety, but you don't have like the 4.5 millimeter and 5.5 millimeter. This is something that you don't have. If there's a hook manufacturer listening to this or watching this, feel free to give us some options to have some Knooking hooks and Knooking needles. Otherwise, we just take what we have. Of course, you can always use this hook as a regular crochet hook. So if you like working with this kind of a hook, you can still use it for all your other crochet projects. And even since this is like a very long crochet hook, you can even use it for quite a lot of Tunisian crochet projects as well. Okay, so let's start. I'm taking my Knooking hook right here. It's a 6 millimeter. The yarn that I'm using is the red Pingo First 6 from Penguin, and they usually say that you would need a 6 millimeter hook or 6 millimeter needles to use for this yarn. And what I need for Knooking is a piece of yarn to put in the bottom of my hook, and for that I'm going to use this gray. The length of it really depends on how big your project is. I'm just taking out a piece of it, and I think that should be enough for our little crash course. And I'm just going to place the yarn in the hole in the back, and I just put a double knot in there to secure it. I usually also place the knot very close to the hook so that in the end, when I pull it through, it won't get blocked throughout the way. And this is all you really need, so we can already start. The beginning of a Knooking project is the same like you would do for a regular crochet project or a Tunisian crochet project or even like a knitting project. You would start either with a chain or, of course, you should know me by now, with an I-cord. And for this crash course, I'm going to make an I-cord of 15 stitches. So again, you have a slip knot, you have the yarn end, a longer tail to the one side, and then the yarn that goes to your yarn skein on the other side. And then take your end yarn and wrap it around the hook from the front. Take your working yarn, wrap it around from the back, so you have 3 loops on your hook, and then take this last loop through the 2 loops that you already had, And like that you continue until you have 15 stitches or 15 I-cord elements, just as you wish. Here we go, 15 stitches for my I-cord. And now we basically start as if we would do a regular Tunisian crochet project. So we are going to get all the loops on our hook. And the first one, if you have made it with the I-cord, you already have the first loop on your hook. If you have made a chain, of course, make sure to then go into the second chain element from the hook. And here we can just continue. So we go into our next stitch right here, yarn over and pull it through. And this we do for all of the stitches. So in the end, we should have 15 loops on our hook. Here we go, 15 loops on our hook. And now comes the big difference, because now we are going to use our yarn tail as a floating yarn throughout our project, so that when we then turn it, then we still can keep all our stitches not on the hook or not on any knitting needles or whatever, but just on your floating or helper yarn right here. So with that being said, I am just going to push all of those loops from my hook like this, and be careful to not push it or pull it out too much. Always keep a bit of the end yarn right here, and then turn your work so we can start directly with our first round. And the first stitch that I'm going to show you that you can use for nooking is actually the knit stitch. So it's exactly like the knit stitch from knitting, and for that we are going in our first loop right here. Here's our working yarn, and I'm just going to push that to the back, and then you just yarn over and pull it through, and then you go into the next loop, yarn over, pull it through, in the next, yarn over, pull it through, all the way 15 stitches along. And like that you can also see here in between our gray yarn, the helper yarn is visible, and it helps to see the loops that are right on top of it, so we can easily grab them and work the round in there or work our stitches in there. And our last one, the same thing. And now it looks like this. And then again, we now have to take out our helper yarn because we don't need it. We have all the loops now on our hook. So you just drag on it and pull it out of your work. And after that, it's the same thing like we had it before. We take our work and push it on our helper yarn, and then turn our work, and we continue exactly the same thing, the same way. We take our working yarn and push it to the back, yarn over, and go stitch by stitch or loop by loop, always using the knit stitch. So this is the easiest and simplest stitch that you can do. And here we go. And now we drag on our helper yarn and then pull all the loops through, turn your work, and I will just make a few stitches for you to see how the structure looks like, but I'm pretty sure if you do know some of the knitting textures that you would also see on sweaters, on scarves, on hats, then this pattern or this structure is will be very familiar for you. And I'll meet you in a little bit. So here we go. I made a few rounds, and as you can see, I mean, we all know this pattern so well because it is 100% exactly like knitting, and it looks the same on both sides. It's super squishy and super flexible. I mean, I'm always so amazed and impressed how easy you can do something like this without knowing how to knit at all. And this is just using the knit stitch and turning all the time. Now, if you want to do the real, I don't even know how to explain it, the real knitting texture, knitting pattern, this is what I'm going to show you next, because for that we would also need the purl stitches. So whenever we turn our work, then we have to switch from the knit stitch to the purl stitch. So exactly like you would know it from knitting, it's really the same. So let's make another round first of knit stitches like we had it before, with the yarn from the top. Always going right there where the helper yarn is. And it doesn't matter if you see how I squish everything here a bit together. That is absolutely fine because the texture and the work is super squishy and usually also goes back to the original position. And by taking out our helper yarn, we will always take it back in the size. So now we had our knit stitches, and now we turn and continue with the purl stitches. Now the purl stitches in the flat can be a little bit complicated at first. Of course, it would be easier to have it in the round because just by making the knit stitch in the front then already creates the purl stitch in the back. But for a flat piece like this, and for our crash course, this goes a little bit different. So you go into the first loop right here, and then you would simply grab the yarn, you keep it on the back of your work and just pull that through like this. And then now we start with the first purl stitch, and for that you would take your hook and go from the other side, then twist your hook around and then grab the yarn and pull it through. I know this was a bit complicated. This is a bit complicated, so I'll show it again. So you take your hook, grab the yarn and twist it around, and then you take your hook, or you take the yarn, your working yarn, and pull it through to create this little knot here. I will just show you the full round because I know the purl stitches in the flat can be difficult. So again, we grab the hook, pull it through, and then take our hook and grab the yarn, and then again right here and pull it through. So you can see we always create those little holes here, or those little knots here. Then again from the side, twist the hook and take it through, and again from the side and pull it through, from the side, twist the hook, and then so that means that on the back side of our work we always do yarn unders, and on the right side of our work, or the front side, we have the yarn overs, just in case you would need something to remember it. And you see, once you have made a few rounds, and by using the head of your hook, it goes quite easy. And for the last one, we do exactly the same thing, like this. And now our round is complete, and we can start taking our helper yarn out. Like that, also the yarn is in the back, so we can easily make our knit stitches now by just doing the same thing like we had it before, so always from the top. And maybe you can already see how we created the typical knitting pattern, but it will most probably show best after one or two more rounds. So of course, when you do it like this, the row with the knit stitch always goes super fast, and the row with the purl stitches always is a little bit slower. But trust me, once you know how to do it, then it is no issue at all. And let's start the round again. So again, we take the yarn from the bottom and pull it through. And then we go from the side, twist our yarn and pull it through the loop. Again, from the side, yarn under and pull it through. From the side, yarn under, pull it through. From the side, yarn under, pull it through. Where is it? Up here, from the side, just all the way for each of those stitches. So only the very first stitch of the round is a little bit different. And let's see, in the back it already starts looking like a typical backside of a knitting project. And let's check out the front part. And I mean, what can I say? This already looks exactly like knitting. So I will make a few more rounds so you get a better impression of it, and then also show you how the texture is, and I'll meet you in a little bit. So are you ready? Because here's how it looks. Just like knitting, and even also the structure and how it feels is exactly the same. The back side and the front side, you can even like push it a little bit more so you can get those V's out a bit more. The border tends to curl a little bit, mainly because of the stitches. They are a little bit irregular on the side. I mean, you can still see those V's, but overall, I think this is quite a pretty alternative if you, like me, can't knit or can't coordinate having two needles in your hands, or if you want to have like an alternative also to Tunisian crochet and you just want to use patterns that are more like knitting, then this definitely is a beautiful alternative. And to finish this crash course, I'm going to show you how to make a ribbing effect. So if you want to use it for the cuffs for a sweater, or also like a scarf or a hat, it's actually quite easy. There are also two ways to do the ribbing. Here's the first one. So the first one is a knit stitch, and then you take the yarn to the front and make a purl stitch, and then take the yarn back to the back and have the next knit stitch, and like that, alternating all the time, knit and purl stitches all the way through. And since we had 15 stitches, our last stitch then is a knit stitch. And now when going to the back side, here you can also see like where you get like those little bumps right here. Those were all the purl stitches, and the straight ones in between are the knit stitches. So when we now turn, of course, we would start with a purl stitch because we ended the round with a knit stitch. So we have our very first stitch right here, and then we take the yarn to the back and make our next knit stitch, and then again to the front. Oops, this was wrong, sorry. You grab it and then go to the back, and then again our purl stitch, and again alternating all the way. And pull it through. And I think you can already see what happens. The full effect, of course, will come with a few more rounds, and I will just make some for you so you can see it. 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . . . . . . . 。 . 。 . . . 。 . . . 。 . 。 . . . 。 . . . 。 . . . 。 . . 。 。 . . 。 . 。
。 . .
。 . So as you can see, you get a perfect ribbing, super stretchy, super beautiful on both sides. And again, it does not only look like knitting, it basically is knitting, but with a hook. How awesome is that? And now I will give you another option for a ribbing that is even easier, because with that you don't even need purl stitches. And for that you would start with a knit stitch, then you take the yarn to the front, you grab the next loop, you don't do anything with it, take the yarn to the back again, and then make your next knit stitch, then again yarn to the front, grab the next loop, yarn to the back, make the next knit stitch, yarn to the front, yarn to the back, knit stitch, yarn to the front, pick up that loop, yarn to the back, knit stitch, yarn to the front, pick the loop, yarn to the back, and knit stitch, and again yarn to the front, pick the loop, yarn to the back, knit stitch, and one last time yarn to the front, pick the loop, yarn to the back, and knit stitch. And now we pull it through, and now we just take our end yarn here from the corner, and we just put it to the back, because here we have our next knit stitch, and then again pull it to the front, pull it to the back, knit stitch. So we always, on whatever side you are, we are just working the knit stitches, and we leave the purl stitches completely out in that case. So we are not even doing anything with them. So in one round you work the knit stitches that you have, and in the background you only work the knit stitches. And for the last one you don't do anything, you just pick it up, and again with our helper yarn strand right here, nothing happens, you won't lose those stitches at all. And then we can continue as we did it before, always bringing that yarn to the front and to the back around those purl stitches from the other side, basically. So this is a super fast and easy way to make a ribbing. I'm pretty sure that this also exists for knitting. Without saying too much, because I really don't know that much about knitting myself, but I think I've seen this kind of a technique to get a ribbing, and by only working like only every second stitch, then you would also don't need that much of yarn. And like this you continue all the way, and I will again make a few rounds so you have like the comparison, and then of course you can always decide which way you prefer, and then just go with it. So here we go. As you can see, the second version is a little bit tighter, but super squishy. I mean, it's really like, if you could feel it, this would be like a perfect ribbing for socks, or even like the ribbing on a hat would look absolutely beautiful with this. And here you can see there's like this little line right here. This was the traditional way, where you have like a larger gap in between the V-stitches, and this was the second option. And I mean, both of them look absolutely gorgeous. It looks like knitting, it feels like knitting. I mean, everything, the whole textures right here. And you can do so many things with this. And you can also combine regular crochet and knooking, for example. So just in case you made a hat and you want to make a ribbing, you can always do it this way. And or cuffs. I mean, I almost have like half of a sleeve done, basically in just a few minutes or half an hour or something like this, and it looks fun. So this is definitely a technique that is worth checking out. So in case Knooking was new to you, have fun checking this out. And if you have your project finished, basically I will now show you how to finish it off, because this might be interesting as well as the final of our crash course. And it works the same way like you would do it for also Tunisian crochet. You would just grab the yarn one last time and then slip stitch to get like a nice border at the top. And you don't do anything with the helper yarn. You just go through it and finish the work. Loop by loop. And the last one. And like that, you get a pretty finish border up here. And this is how you would finish it. Now you would just like drag the helper yarn out and you're good to go. So what do you think? How awesome is Knooking? So thank you so much for watching this Knooking crash course. I hope it was inspiring for you to see what else there is out there that creates patterns and pieces that look knitted, even though we are just using a crochet hook. And of course, I hope to see you back again next time, only at the Totally First Crochet channel. Bye! Happy Knooking!